Hello and greetings everyone, this is Darth Coldy speaking with another video. Now today I wanted to speak about the future of Star Wars, and yes, this book cover is not exactly the future because it was written quite a while in the past, but the thing that I want to talk about is the future of the brand, of the franchise, and what can and can't be done. Now I found this book cover to be very fitting, the story as well. Also Timothy Zahn, fantastic author, you should really read his books. As for the topic at hand, Star Wars is actually having some issues, and I think we are all aware of that. And a lot of fans that are into Star Wars now have no idea about what Star Wars used to be. And despite all of that, the future of Star Wars actually looks pretty good. It actually looks like it's gaining traction again. Now, to be fair, for the last about a little bit more than a decade, Star Wars suffered hard. The sequel trilogy and everything, well, not everything, but most of what came after really ruined the brand. They lost a lot of the existing fan base. They barely got any new fans in. Most people just tuned out and are not interested at all. So it looks a bit dark from that perspective. At the same time, it's still going, it's still generating profit, and it does kind of get people a little bit back with the mall and the Ahsoka shows, and it's getting overall better. And this isn't just a Star Wars problem, this is a Western entertainment sector problem, because this is not just Star Wars. This happened to so many brands. It happened to Ghostbusters, it happened to Star Trek, it happened to some degree to the, Game of Thrones, it happened to The Witcher. I hope it will not happen to Warhammer, but we'll have to see about that. It's just that there's so many big, huge franchise and brands, like say Indiana Jones as well, that used to be so big and so beloved and so great, and then they just had to shit on the original characters, completely change the story, completely change what it's all about, and then they wonder why nobody's interested in that anymore. It's like going to a Chinese restaurant and getting served spaghetti, and spaghetti aren't a bad food, but that's not why you came there. Or maybe a even more fitting comparison would be going to a Chinese restaurant and getting served nothing to eat at all because it's now a golf club and you are handed a club and a ball, and that people may enjoy playing golf, but that's not why you visit a Chinese restaurant. And I think that slowly, after a decade of losing money and failures and failures and failures, the West is slowly realizing that, oh, people wanted what we already did and have that bigger and better and more of that instead of something completely new. And I'm not blaming people for trying out something new. That's how innovation happens. That's how we progress. And sometimes you have to try and risk something. But here's the thing. Like, I went to business school. If you try something new, you try it on a small scale with little investment. If that does well, you try it on a larger scale with a little bit more investment. If that does well, you do a final test run on a large budget with a large scale thing, and if that happens, you go into full production. Now, what the West did with the whole woke stuff, they went full on board right away without anything, with any trial period, which was horrendously stupid. But what's even worse is that they didn't learn, because we already had the first huge failures in 2016. We had failures in 17, 18, 19, 20, in 2021 too, and so on and so forth. And now, over a decade of continuous failures later, finally people are starting to realize, oh, maybe that wasn't the brightest idea. In any other business, you can't fail for 10 years in a row and still be going. Yeah, if you do one, that's why you do test runs and stuff like that. But whatever. Future of Star Wars and entertainment in the West in general. Now, many companies are turning this around or trying to. The problem that they are facing, I went over in a different video, but as a short summary, you don't have the people there anymore. You got rid of all the good ones that are now working in other industries and doing other things. And that goes for writing, that goes for actors, that goes for directors. All the good people now doing something else, and you're stuck with the fresh out of university people with no credits, with no experience and still full of the things that university taught them, which is not what people want anymore. So getting the good people back into everything, that will be the real challenge. Getting rid of all the people that ruined your stuff in the first place will be a big challenge. Gaming industry is absolutely nailing that right now. They're saying like they let go, I think, 5,000 people just the last month, because they're saying you guys didn't contribute anything. You had your chances. In 6 years you haven't produced anything of value, just lost us money. Bye. Good for the gaming industry, really. You have to fire people that do not do their job very well. If they are losing your money, you have to fire them. The problem is that the amount of people you have to fire is astronomical at this point. And then running a big brand with a skeleton crew, difficult to do, especially if you don't have the talent there anymore. And the problem that Star Wars has is that the talent that is still there is so set in their ways that they refuse to listen to the fans or anything other than their own vision. And that used to be Kathleen Kennedy, who is gladly out. But Dave Filoni also is hell-bent on doing his beloved characters and his beloved stories and his beloved timeline, which I think is so overdone at this point that something fresh would really, really be needed. That again, that doesn't just go for Star Wars. We have that in other franchises as well, but not only in the movie and TV show sector, but also in gaming. I don't know if you have any experience with that, like Dragon Age 4 ruined that franchise. We have so many games in production right now that will ruin the franchises, like the new God of War game set on Lo-Fi, and so many other things. Like, there have been so many flops and so many ruined franchises, so many ruined brands, even outside of entertainment with Budweiser and all kind of that. How many brands have to die before changes happen? Apparently we are nearing this point, because many companies are already trying to turn around. Actually doing it will be the real challenge. As for Star Wars, I actually think we are at crossroads that is looking rather good for us, because first of all, the fans, thank you fans, the fans are still speaking loud and clear, and there's still quite some fans out there that tell us what they want and what we need to do. And there are still millions of fans out there to bank on, so there is still a large audience to go for, which sadly other franchises do not have. Because again, Star Wars used to be the biggest brand in entertainment. I don't think it is anymore, but it used to, and the fans are still there, and they're still willing to support and buy merch and all that kind of stuff. So you really just have to go back to the fans and do what they want. And they are kinda, sorta, somewhat trying that with the Heirs of the Empire stuff that's coming out now. Big issue with that is that they're not adapting it one for one as they should, because that's what the fans would love to see, and that's what would get you a new audience. They are taking small bits and pieces of it and cramming it, ham-fasting it into the already existing story, which you shouldn't do, because that will just ruin even more great stories. The real problem is that they can't go back without a clean cut. The thing that Disney should do is say, look, we tried the whole sequel trilogy thing, it was a complete mess, we'll scrap everything from 2016 onward, we'll scrap the entire trilogy, we'll scrap everything based on the trilogy, we'll scrap everything the trilogy ever mentioned, and do a completely fresh start and adapt what actually happened in the books, in the comics, and so on, and go fresh from there. Problem is that you won't get the original actors to do that anymore, but okay, we have to do something that will get some resistance here. But I can totally see that happen. They should do that. They probably won't. But even if they don't, it's looking bright, because at the very least they're getting rid of the woke stuff. At the very least they're adapting some source material, even though I fear they will do so very, very badly. On the other hand, I think it's still looking very bright, because gaming. Yes, the Western industry, the entertainment industry, is kinda saved by video games. If you think that's weird. No, that's actually been happening for the last almost 20 years. Like George Lucas was amongst the first people to realize in the 90s that gaming is the future of entertainment, because gaming is so much more interactive and there's so much more hours spent in gaming than watching anything, and there is just so much more potential for storytelling as well, because you can actually have different timelines, different outcomes, different universes in the same product. So this is pretty cool, and the players can kinda customize the story to their own liking. That's something that movies just can't do, and it's way more interactive. It's way more fleeing the real world, escapism. That's what gaming is, and I think the gaming for the future for Star Wars is indeed gaming. If you look at the Star Wars fans and how the movies did, how the TV shows did, abysmally so. The games stayed strong. Star Wars Old Republic is now having a huge uptick in player numbers, and that's even before the 8.0 update that will bring so many more cool changes to the game. The KOTOR remakes and KOTOR 3 are so hyped, and there's so many people who support and love what they're doing there. Cal Kestis is getting his final game, and at least for now, final game, the end of his story. He is getting a TV show, probably a movie, or the other way around, I can't remember, but they're really banking on the video game stuff right now, because there's such a huge market and so many fans into the video games that are really hyping the entire thing up. But what's more important is that the fans keep the brand alive. What Disney refused to do, the fans did. There's so many great fan movies on YouTube. There's so many fantastic productions, completely fan-made, maybe with AI, maybe with animation, may it be in anime style, or may it be with actual live action stuff and costumes, because they tell fantastic new stories set in the Star Wars universe. They tell and continue stories that we love. They show us parts of Vader's life that we haven't seen anywhere else, and they're really good at it. And actually some of the fan productions are getting more traction and more views than anything that Disney ever made. And I think the execs at Disney start to realize that and try to course correct. They probably won't do the thing that they have to, but overall it's looking bright. Star Wars merch is on the rise again, and there is just so many collaborations that go really well. Like Destiny 2 had a big collab with Star Wars for their latest expansion, Renegades I think it was called, and I play Destiny 2 since a little bit before was it Beyond Light, like the Ice Planet Europe expansion. I started like 4 months before that came out. So I've been with Destiny 2 for a while. I've over 1,000 hours played in that, and I have to say that Renegades is more or less, I wouldn't say the best expansion that they had, because I think that's Beyond Light in my personal opinion. There were better ones before apparently, which I didn't get to play because they sunsetted them. But I think this is the best expansion that we have seen in a long time, story-wise and gameplay-wise. You get your own lightsaber, and the story is clearly based on the sequel trilogy. Funnily enough, they do Kylo Ren much better than Disney did. The main villain of that story arc is clearly inspired by Kylo Ren, like it's almost a copy, but they actually do him a lot more justice and actually do him a lot better than what Disney did. There's collabs with other games as well, and I think the Star Wars fandom is still there and it's still big. Now the one thing that Western media, there's two things that Western media in general has to realize right now, because the new generations sadly are not the ones you want to cater to. Why? It used to be that you have to cater to the new generation to make sure that your company survives into the future, because the old one would die out. That's that. Now the problem that we are having currently is that our population is kinda on the collapse. You have old people like I can only speak for certain areas that I know. Here in Germany, I actually did a study on that. And there's many cities have 60% of the population being 60 years aged 60 and older. So the biggest population is the old one. That's the OG Star Wars fans. That's the guys that grew up in the 60s and 70s. That's your core. That's the vast majority of your customers are the old people. And given how life expectancy works these days and how old people can get, they are probably your customers for the next few decades to come as well. The guys that grew up in the 80s and 90s like I did, that's your core audience, because that is sort of the future for the next, I don't know, half century probably. And they have money, unlike the new generations. The new generations, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are insignificant. Like, they are to get combined like 20% of the population, if that. That's not a good look, and they are broke as hell, and that's not their fault. I don't want to shit on them. They are in a really bad spot, but they don't have money to spend. So if you are a company and you're running a company, you have to look which customers you can actually get to pay you for your services. I work at a fitness center, and you might think, well, fitness has to cater to young people because they are interested in it. No, the exact opposite happens. We are catering to the elderly, because the elderly are more than half our customer base. And the people approaching elderly status, they are almost, I'd say, a third. Well, if our elderly population is about 50% of our customer base, another, I'd say, 30 to 40% is the generation 40 to 60, and the rest is the young people. So you have to cater to what's actually paying for your product. That's a problem across industries, but that's just how it is. So catering to what the elderly people want, the generations 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years of age and beyond that, that's your audience that you need to cater to, because that's where the money is. And I don't know if Hollywood or any industry is going to realize that anytime, but you definitely should realize that is where the money is, and that's the people you have to cater to, and you have to produce what they liked. And what's even more hilarious is that in special Gen Z is absolutely into the whole retro stuff. They are playing games that are that were produced before they were born. They are into the 90s stuff, music-wise, game-wise, movie-wise. They are watching more of the stuff that was produced in the 80s and 90s than they are watching stuff that is produced right now. So even the younger generations prefer the old stuff. So you really have to do the old stuff, don't you? Now, as for Star Wars and the future, it should go. I already said they should scrap the trilogy, the whole sequel era, which probably isn't going to happen, but that's what they should do. Now, the anime Ninth Jedi did something very interesting that I think is a route that Disney should take, because it said we are placing our setting in 1000 ABY, so that's roughly a millennium after Luke died. There is so much opportunity to do really new stuff, because 1000 years after Luke's death, everything could change. Everything can change, and some things have changed. And in this setting, you are kinda free, which Disney originally said they wanted to do, to free up the creatives to do whatever they wanted. 1000 years into the future, 1000 years after Luke's, you can do whatever, basically. There is, all possibilities are there. Problem is, you can't go and revive characters from back when, though technically speaking with Force Ghosts and so you could, but you can really focus on a new setting. You could also just do the route of adaptation. That worked really well for Game of Thrones, didn't it? And if you do adaptations right, and if you do them properly, that's the point, you have to do them faithfully, like Lord of the Rings did, the original movies by Peter Jackson. If you do the adaptation right, and you actually adapt instead of recreating everything new, and you actually adapt the old stuff, there is 4 decades worth of material to do that. And I think going into the whole Luke era or Skywalker era is not a bright move, because first of all, the Clone Wars stuff is overdone, and the actual Luke story, you kinda ruined that chance with making Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford mad, and now Carrie Fisher is dead, and people will not like you giving those roles to other people or CGI revivals or something. It's I wouldn't touch that for another 20 or 30 years, really. You should do that again sometime in the future, but not now, not in the next 10 to 20 years at least. What you could do is go back in time and give us the Old Republic content or Ancient Sith content, like 3,000 or 6,000 years back. That is a completely different setting inside of Star Wars, where everything works differently, where we have so many cool characters, so many cool stories to tell, a much more action heavy universe where just so much more stuff is happening. That would be perfect for shows and movies, especially if you think that your audience is doing stuff aside, because apparently many entertainment producers like Amazon and Warner Brothers think that their viewers can't be bothered to actually watch what they're watching because they have to do something on the side, on the phone, or cooking or cleaning or whatever, and not paying attention to what's happening on the screen anyway. So action heavy stuff would actually kind of solve the problem, because you don't have to constantly pay attention, and if you do, there's something cool happening. So better than endless dialogue that you can just put in audio. And it could also revive the visual medium, because you could also try and do shows that do a lot of visual storytelling where you have to pay attention. That's why games are so popular, because they really get you into something, which modern productions sadly often don't, because they don't even try to, because they think you're not paying attention anyway. So they give you products that don't need your attention, and then why should I pay attention if I don't need to? It's a circle of the devil, basically. So I'd really hope that we get more of that, and if Disney isn't delivering, the fans are. So I think the future looks really bright for Star Wars, especially with the new games coming, especially with SWTOR getting another update. I think the future is bright, and I think the dark times are kinda over. With that said, I wish you a fantastic day, and may the Force be with you.